Hey, it's Ryder Timberlake with some coding. We find ourselves now in the middle of this Elixir port of the game Give Me Your Lunch Money, which is a text adventure game about the exploits of an 8-year-old inventor made by my friend Daniel Cole Berlin back in 2009. I also scored the music for it at that time. I'm bringing it over to Elixir for a couple of different reasons. One of which is, yes, I'd like to open it up to a larger audience than the original audience who was able to play it through the Adrift Interactive Fiction Toolkit. That's the only means it's possible to play it through right now. I would like to make that a little bit more accessible, just put it in a web app that somebody can play with. But one might ask, well, why not just do it as a JavaScript app? And that would be a fully legitimate question to ask. So one of the reasons to do this particular port also is just to continue to get more experience building Elixir applications. It's not something I have much experience with. At the time that I originally started this project, 6, 8 months ago, it was something I had almost no experience with. So it's been great for that. It's been great also for test-driven development. This project, at least it has very strong TDD sympathies, if not being at times fully test-driven. One of those things that we're trying to go back and sort of revisit and retool today is actually the lack of a higher level acceptance test on this project so far, which is a really important gap and is certainly what we should have started with if we're doing like a real true TDD flow, started with that higher level acceptance test. It would be a failing test, done whatever we could in the code to make it pass at whatever point, which would probably have been almost immediately, really, that we needed to drop down lower level. Then we would drop down to those lower level tests, write the failing unit test, and then change the code to make it work. So yeah, that's where we find ourselves, is trying to revisit that decision of not having a higher level acceptance test and flesh that out today. Some of the issues that we ran into last time, I was talking about in the last episode, was trying to sort of think through and figure out was, well, our workhorse function here is this gmylm.gameloop/3 function, which we're calling recursively, passing in the new state of the game world every time we make that call. Now, the issue is, if you're just recursing down, and that's how your game is processing its changes of state, how are you sticking an assertion into some level of that recursion to be able to say, okay, now check that it's like this? And so I had talked about a possible implementation of passing down like a key value pair, like a tuple of the instructions to be executed, and then the assertions that would be checked based on the execution of those instructions, which I think is a really cool idea, actually, and has some really interesting implications, or applications, I should say, implications for applications in the context of like a self-growing, self-organizing system, like, for example, an artificial intelligence. Right. But for the current purposes, is probably not the most appropriate implementation. The one that we're going to most likely end up using here is just writing a new function definition for that game loop 3 function, which would be something to the effect of, hey, you call it with this incremental atom at the end of it, or maybe it's the same function. Anyway, these are implementation details that I don't need to be getting super mincy with. But basically, yeah, we want to write it so that we have a version of this function which is just going to return the, rather than returning a call to itself with a new state, is actually just going to return that new state. And then we can do our assertions in line. It should be easier to reason about, easier to read. Yeah, so this is likely what we're going to go with. I have posted a question to the Indie Elixir flow doc to see what people think. But that is the implementation which seems like the soundest path forward at the moment, and it's the one I intend to go forward with. So we will just take a second to bring up my screen, and yeah, here we go. So we got this Trello board over here. We got the acceptance test. Basically, it should fail at some point. We initialize the game, walk the player around. It should fail at an event. I'm not exactly sure when that'll be. I should mention now, I'll be mentioning this in future episodes, but as we flesh this game out a little bit more, there's going to be more and more of an opportunity for spoilers to be unveiled. So if you're someone who has any interest in actually playing this game, I recommend you go out and do that. You can Google "Give me your lunch money Adrift," "Give me your lunch money Daniel Berlin." Any combination of search terms, potentially even just "Give me your lunch money," will get you to where you need to go as far as downloading the game so you can play it. But as we get further into this, there's going to be more and more spoilers. So one of those cases is today. So I recommend, if you do want to get a completely clean, full pass of the game, I would go ahead and do that now. Otherwise, yeah, we're going to get into some very early game spoilers, but some spoilers nonetheless. So probably the event at which we'll fail with this acceptance test is going to be the demolishing of your fort by the bullies. So we'll probably look to fail around then, if not beforehand, and we'll just kind of dig into it and see how things are. I do want to get a look at the status of our Git repo. So we've got some unstaged changes right now. Right, this acceptance test, I've just made some changes there. And then this is hanging out from a thread from an earlier episode. We will revisit this at some point, just not today. Right. Ultimately, we want to invoke a function that does a thing based on input. Ultimately, we want to do this kernel apply thing. So that is already the implementation now. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these notes, because for me now they are clutter. Right, so then we have case, and then we have an error case. So we could surface the error here rather than in the thing, but this is really bike shedding, and it's not what I came here to do. I'm not going to finish or explore that thought presently. So yeah, start game, right? You call initialize game, find, right, for this event that is the start game. So we are doing that right now, and then we render the event. We pipe that to render event, and then we call game loop on the player and the world. This is not really convention. I don't even think that's my convention, is it? Well, now I'm again sort of bike shitting, but this one seems potentially relevant. Yeah. So I'm putting the pipes at the end of the line. That's not usually how I see that being done. I usually see those pipes on the following line. Interesting. So deviant piping. I'm writing a note because, as I said, this is not what I came here to do. It's much less of a bike shed, I feel, because I think there's an in-ecosystem convention. Most places I see people with the pipes, they're on the following line. And also, that's just how I've kind of gotten used to seeing it and working with it. And so actually looking at my own code now and seeing the pipe be on the same line as the data which that pipe is passing on to the following function is a little strange for me. So I've just put a little note to myself there. So, right. Let's run this test suite, make sure everything's fine. Whoa, okay, right. Everything is not fine because in the current implementation of that, so I went by that kind of quick. So yeah, see this right here, this is the sign that we're stuck in this endless loop, which we don't, well, not, just kind of stalled in the loop, I guess, because we're not making another we're not doing anything. We're just kind of hanging out at that point. I'm not sure why it manifests itself in this particular way, which looks like it's continuing to make the call because the thing is continuing to show up. So I'm not really sure why that is, and I'm curious to know. So maybe we'll figure that out at some point. All right. So GMYLM test. It's that top level test. I don't know whether this is ultimately where it belongs. This acceptance test almost certainly will not ultimately live here, but for now it's fine. Plays through the game. Player world gmylm.initialize game. Player world gmylm.game loop. All right, I need a second. We need to write a new game loop function. So really, if we were to write a test for that, which would be a unit test, we would just test essentially that. I mean, really, the test is just that you run it in the test and it doesn't screw up your whole test suite like it's doing right now. So it would be like process command 3 is there. Oops, a game loop too. It's fine. We can undo this for now. Uncomment it. I thought it was game loop 3. I've been calling it game loop 3 for a while. Well, what does it take in? It takes in, oh, right, it's process command, which gets called with the input. It's game loop, which just gets called with the player and the world. Okay, that's fair. Why are those separate? That's, why are those separate? Why are those separate? Why wouldn't it just be a world struct that then has a player key, an event key, a locations key? The player is part of the world. Player is part of the world. There's only one player for each world. They're totally interrelated. All right, so yeah, maybe player should be part of world. Then you're just passing that one thing in all the time. It would change a lot of things, but it would be easy to make that find and replace and then go back and. So maybe player should be part of world. So I know exactly what I'm talking about, like as a player key of the world struct. All right, cool. So it has a prompt. So if we were to run this right now, let's say we comment out this acceptance test for the time being. And let's run it right now with this, and we would expect it to screw up in the same way that it's been screwing up. Oh, yeah, same way. All this. Yeah, so that was expected. I don't know how meaningful a test that really is. It has a prompt. Wait, if you're doing, oh, right. No, but if you do game loop with the victory, I think, let me just see what that does. I realize that's super gross looking. We want to comment this out because otherwise it'll stick us into that loop. I think it'll print UN to standard out, maybe. Whoa, that's interesting. So we kicked back the state. Was there assertion in that to fail? Did we? No, in. Really? That's interesting. So we are making this identical call on 57 and 60, but that shouldn't be the source of our trouble. We did call mixed test up here after seeing this screw up here. So this should be unrelated. Interesting, interesting. Yeah, that's just all this barf here is just the game state, right? That's interesting. Okay. So game loop player world victory. I don't even really like that function definition, and we'll get back to it at some point. Oh, I didn't mention this at the top of this video, but I'd sort of like to keep things a little short today. One of the reasons being I'd like to get back into kind of a rhythm with this project, and I feel one of the ways to do that is to do a little bit, maybe not every day, but just a little bit more often. It's been, I think, a week and a half or more since my last video with this, and that leaves a lot of time for the context kind of spinning up to become very expensive, because you're always kind of coming back to this thing, looking at it and being like, and you're not getting the advantage of being in a rhythm and a flow, working with the same project day to day. So I think one of the ways that I could be working on this more frequently is to just work on it, not very much. So it won't be a 1 hour video today. Hopefully it'll be close to half an hour, but I could see it being more, since I didn't mention that really clearly up front. It's probably been 15 minutes or something now. All right, process command, game loop, render output, that's fine. Yeah, there is no game loop that takes in a victory, so that's interesting. I do see a reasonable amount of duplication here, which I'm fine with for the time being. I feel it's really strongly, when I make abstractions, I want them to actually coherently represent some domain concept. And if they don't, then I'm fine with the stuff being duplicated. What would this represent, just as an exercise, I guess? This would be, you're getting the input, you're processing the command, and you're calling the thing again. So it would be like set prompt, get command, call game loop. See, that just seems like 3 discrete steps. Game loop. And they seem like discrete steps of the game loop. I don't really know how you're going to abstract those into a domain concept, again, that is coherent and makes sense in the ecosystem you're working in. So yeah, we're going to leave that the way it is for now. Game loop, player, thingy, player, world, thingy, world. Yep, this is great. We just want to do, yeah, really what it seems like to me that you want. Oh, interesting. So you pass it in with an event. No, see, I am sort of thinking, but I don't want it to be a big conditional grody thing in the middle. Render event. So the render event is calling your render output. That I'm not as big a fan of. We call render event. Oh, dang. Render output, puts description, and then return the thing. Okay, so that I'm a big not fan of, that we've got, and I don't think there's any testing around these functions either, which I'm even more of not a fan of, is that this render output and this render event, they're behaving sort of, yeah, so your render output is kicking back the actual world, and your render event is just doing text. It's just side effects, right? To put it that way. Um, and I'm very, very not a fan of that. And the one which seems like it's being way more faithful to what the thing actually is this render event right here. Because again, this render output is not only putsing the thing that needs to be putsed, but then it's also returning the world and render event. I would rather have like a call event that gets passed to render output, right? Like a invoke event or something that gets passed to render output that then does the rendering. Yeah, this there's some funk down here. Yeah, it's not what I came in here to do, but this has got to get trimmed because that kind of divergence between similarly named stuff, and it's not like these are hard functions too, right? But I could make things so much more difficult for myself if I just leave those like that and just sort of, even though they really handle things differently and are poorly named, I would say, just sort of letting them be there, and it's like giving in to rot right there. It's like saying I am okay if this code rots, and that's not a good attitude, and it doesn't lead to good things. So yeah, need to pass game loop an event to run if relevant. How do we know when events are to be run? Certain commands run events in certain contexts. Run event when player arrives in location first time. Visited flag for locations. We are going to have a visited flag for locations. This is sort of over in another area. We came in here to do the higher level acceptance test, which I'm increasingly suspecting that we're not going to finish today. Even just to the first kind of point. But the one thing that we can do, I think, is write that function that incrementally takes a thing. Although, here's that thing where you as a person are always part of the equation for whatever you're building. And I am feeling a little bit fragile today, although I was feeling off my game the last video of these I made too, so maybe I should make them when I'm in a better frame of mind. Yeah. Anyhow, yeah, this duplication with this slash in slash in slash in, that'll definitely get dealt with at some point. So if this doesn't actually work, oh, right, because that unit test doesn't actually test the execution of this, it just tests that it kicks that back. All right, so this is meaningless. This is not, it's not something. All right. Get input module invalid command. I think there's a better way to do that. You could just return error here and then let it get handled at that other level. No, but this is the level it should be handled at, is here in the interface. See, I'm just kind of, all right, there's some funk here. We identified that. All right, let's try and get this thing. Game loop, player, world, game loop. We just want one of these which does an incremental. Type. Just shameless green. Shameless green here. Type. Yeah. No. Type should default to recursive. It should be explicit. It should be explicit. Yeah, that's fine. But then you're adding a whole nother argument. All those tests are going to break. Yeah, they are. What tests? You don't have tests around the game loop. If you run your suite right now, everything's going to pass. No, it's not because I'm doing this funky thing. All right, we'll get to this here in a moment. All right, this is too much, you guys. This crowding up here. What changes did I make to event test? I don't think I made any changes. Nothing's showing up. Yeah, I probably got about 5-10 minutes before I want to wrap this up. So I've more or less made my peace with not getting anything done today. um, but we'll be back to it soon. Do I need player and world to output? Let's see. What are you thinking I've done here? Fine, no trailing white space, whatever, but like, what are my changes? I feel like there's probably a really easy way to see what my changes are that I am demonstrating my ignorance of right now. It should show up in the diff, though. No, I'm not. This is not actually that important. Finding out where it is. Deviant piping, that was good. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. We're still doing that acceptance test. Event map. Okay, event map, event map. Right. All right, I am just going to say don't save. I don't know what the changes are. I guess the safer thing would have been to say save. So type is going to be recursive, default to recursive. This recursive atom. We'll get there in a second. Yeah, it's either going to be recursive or incremental, I guess. You could say recursive or non-recursive. Could just be recursive or nothing, but I really like to make both sides explicit. You could do a recursive true. I could do a recursive true. Recursive true. I'm okay with that. No, stop making changes in your production code. Write a test, write a failing test. You didn't write a test for this yet. All right. Interface, render output, IO puts description. Okay, player world. Yeah. Oof. I mean, if I'm only planning on spending 5 more minutes on it anyway, I sort of feel like, what's the point of torturing myself? What am I really going to get accomplished in that period of time? Recursive, true. Yeah, I'll probably do another one of these tomorrow. See you, y'all. Have a good day.